Hello, welcome to the July 30th, 2024 Club Cubase livestream. My name is Greg Undo, and I'm the host of the livestream today. If you have not attended a livestream before, how it works is you can ask questions in the live chat field, or simply go to send a question in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, if you could indicate which level of Cubase you're running, so if it's 11, 12, 13, which version. So if you're running Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, or other Steinberg products. Also, which operating system, that information is helpful. When asking questions, we may not be able to have a complete, so in asking questions, I may not be able to have a, real-time type of response, but we will go through all the questions as they're asked chronologically. So if you don't get an immediate response to your question, at that point, if we could avoid asking the same question over and over again, that would be helpful and appreciated. And if we should, after several hours after the live stream ends, we should have an index of all topics that have been covered in the live stream, so with timestamps, and you could refer to that. If you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, I think we're over 34,000 topics. You could go to Club Cubase. You could go to Cubase Index go to cubaseindex.com. And we want to thank Jan from Stockholm for creating that wonderful website. So you can just kind of type your question in, and it could take you to over 1,400 hours of live streams and search through, so you can find a particular topic and navigate directly to that part of the video. Also, we want to give a special thanks to Agent K and Jazz Dude, who serve as moderators in the live stream. So they're not Steinberg employees, they just do it out of the goodness of the community. So we'll give special thanks to them, and also give a special kudos to Jazz Dude for his work with the unofficial Cubase Nation Discord, which is a wonderful source of information for the Steinberg community. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America, and I primarily focus on Steinberg products, and I'm the host today, and I'm presenting from outside of Washington, D.C. in the United States, in Alexandria, Virginia. So if you're watching live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. Since it is the last live stream of the month, we will be doing our typical Zoom social meetup. So I'll go ahead and paste the link in, and we'll get started with that in about 2 hours. So that should be pasted. I'll try to paste the link in every half hour or so. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we have Daniel just says, welcome back, Greg. How's your vacation? So it was very relaxing. So it's kind of typical, relax on the beach, read some books, and got to take my son go-karting for the first time. So he enjoyed that. All right, so we see Tim K checking in from Zeist in the Netherlands, who's happy to be joining again. All right, so we see from Rent Costas, who asks, hello friends, I have Cubase 10 and Contact 6. I have a problem with the application of the guitar with the MIDI. So let me know if you're having, if it's a MIDI, like a MIDI pickup guitar that's that you're having problems with, or if it's a guitar instrument in Contact. I don't have a Contact license on this computer, so I'm not really able to show that. But maybe if you could specify, give us a little more detail. So if it's a guitar, like a MIDI guitar versus a guitar sound in a virtual instrument, we might be able to help. And if you could tell us what exactly your issue is, we could probably help you out. All right, so we have Alexander Plasko. Hello, Greg from Connecticut. Can you demonstrate or explain how well Spectral Layers Pro separates stems in the same or close frequency range, such as guitar and keyboard parts that may or may not be in harmony? All right, so I saw this just a couple minutes before we started the live stream. So I took just a song here. We'll listen to it just to give you a sense of kind of a full ensemble. So we'll have our drums, we'll have guitar, keyboards, bass. So kind of a full ensemble here. And just so we wouldn't have to do this in advance, I went to the modules and we chose to unmix the song. So here if we want to isolate just the drums, and here we can hear the piano and the guitar, and they're kind of playing similar frequency ranges. So let's say let's listen to the piano. We can listen to both those. So listen to bass. So you know they're kind of same frequency ranges. It's still able to kind of pick those up and separate them. So this way I can say I want the piano louder or softer. I want the guitar louder. Softer. So I think there really is a good testament to kind of the algorithms in Spectral Layers to be able to get the guitar and piano, even though they're playing very similar frequency ranges, to be isolated in that way. All right, wonderful to see Robbie Bowling from Dallas, Texas. We see Jan from Cubase Index from Stockholm. Wonderful to see you on. All right, great to see Taylor from Pine Grove, Pennsylvania. And he has a question. Why do I sometimes get license not found when opening Cubase 12? When I end task in the taskbar and reloads, it loads with no issues. So I've had that happen to me once. But make sure that when you're doing that you are logged in. Sometimes if you check to see if, because it may check your it doesn't require an internet connection, but check, make sure that you're running the latest version of 12 as well, and that you have the latest Steinberg activation manager. But you could always kind of check the Steinberg activation manager here and see if that is indicating that the license is active. So you could maybe see there ahead of time. All right. Another question from Taylor from Music for World Peace Records. If I install Cubase 12 on 3 computers, can I use my dongle to install earlier versions on a 4th machine? So yes, you can. So that would work as a separate license for your earlier version, still using your USB-E licenser. All right, so we have Patrick Becker saying hello to everyone. We have Uno Memento checking in from Finland. It says greetings from Finland. They've had all kinds of weather today. Rain, sun, wind, thunder, and hail. And he's only missing snow. So I'm sure the snow will come soon enough. All right, wonderful to see Jazz Dude on. And we have Fred Solomon on. So saying, Greg, how are you? So I'm doing great. Thanks. And it's wonderful to see you on the live stream. All right, and we see Michael Marshall checking in from Somerset in the UK. All right, we have Fly V checking in, I believe, from Winnipeg, if I'm not mistaken. All right, we have Randy Lee from Texas. We have Chris Cutt saying hi. And Dallas LaRue, wonderful to see you from Las Vegas. Great to see you back on regularly. All right, we have a question from the Ethrian machine or Ethrian machine. I have 3 instruments across 3 different channels. I have them blended together to make one sound. I want to save this combo as a template. Is it possible? Can you please demonstrate? All right. All right, so let me just go ahead and add 3 instruments. Okay, so we have a Rhodes. Let's add a Retrolog track. Okay, so we'll just come over here. All right, so say let's go ahead and load one more instrument. So we'll say we'll have okay, so we'll come over here. Let's say we have strings and our Rhodes here. All right, so there's a couple of different approaches that we could take for this. So let's take this approach. So I'm gonna come right over here. Let's save these as a track preset. We'll call this July 30th stack. We will come over to a new project. We will come over here to user presets. We will say track presets multi. And then we'll see our July 30th stack. Drag those over, and now. And that's what all you have to do. So you can save it as a multi-track preset, and then just double clicking on the multi-track preset, you could just load it up just like so. That will load up your instruments, which I did twice. Or if you're just kind of starting from scratch, just double click on your multi-track preset, and then it will automatically be recalled just like that. So let me know if that makes sense for you. All right, wonderful to see Tim Weinheimer on. All right, so we have David M checking in. All right, I see my chat field jumped, so I'll make sure. All right, so we see Fly V from just checking in from Winnipeg. We have John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin. All right, we have Michael Graybill checking in from Dallas. So yeah, it was nice, relaxing vacations. All right, we have Cubase user Thinking Man watching from Jacksonville, Florida. Thanks for joining us today. Love going to Jacksonville. Nice to travel there. All right, we have Stefan checking in from Sweden. We see David M checking in from outside Liverpool. All right, Mike Braley asks, hi Greg, is there a way to split the signal path on the channel without using a send or duplicating a track, say to process the left and right separately? Thanks. So if we wanted to, let's say we'll take our Rhodes here, and we have this on a stereo track. So I'll open up the channel settings, and let's say I wanted to put like maybe a chorus on the left side and a pan or delay on the right side. So we'll take this and let me just strip the reverb. So what we're going to do is in the channel strip here, we're going to say I want a delay. So we'll say, okay, let's do a mono delay. Doesn't really matter. We'll choose a stereo delay, and let's make it like a quarter note delay. So that's in both channels, but I'm running it as a insert, so I want to now come over here and put a chorusing on. All right, so when we go to our routing tab here in the bottom part of the inserts, at this point we could make our inserts mono. So I'm going to come over here and say we want our delay, we want the chorusing to be on the right channel and the delay to be in our left channel. So let's go ahead and make this mono. Let me just choose a different plugin. So sorry, go to our routing here. So now we will have our delay. So let's come over here to our mod machine delay. We'll go back to our inserts. I'll change my delay time to like quarter note delay. So the delay is going to be only on, so we can hear chorusing and on one side and a delay in the other side. So all you have to do is, again, take the insert, select the inserts, go to the routing tab, make these mono, and then you could pick and choose, and the side that is actually passing audio is going to be on the right where we see the two dots. This is where the path is connected, and then you could choose different processing for the left and right channels on a stereo track with your inserts. All right, we see Randy Lee from Texas. We see Tim Weinheimer from Mission Viejo, California. Wonderful to see you on. All right, we see Satish Music Center says, I have Cubase 11. Can I upgrade to the new version? So certainly. So all you'd have to do is just simply, if we come over to so where you see Cubase, and then you'll see buy Cubase 13. So say, okay, I want to buy Cubase Pro 13 and I want to do an updates. So we can say, okay, update from Cubase Pro 11, and then you'll see the price in your particular region or country right there. But just choose to upgrade, and then you get the discounted price for updating since you already have Cubase 11. All right, so we see from Mike Air or Mick Air. What's up, man? I was wondering how to separate tracks when using Groove Agent. All right, so we just jump over. We'll show. So if you wanted to separate like the audio outputs that are going, into separate tracks, like or to separate sounds. So let's say I want to come over here and we'll just kind of play. So right now you can see everything is going out of a stereo output. So what I want to do is to now take like the kicks and I'm going to route it out to bus 2. So let's say I want my snare to go out of output 3, the clap to go out of output 4, the hi-hat here to go out of output 5. So now that I have this kind of routed out, I'm going to take this particular pattern here, and now I'm going to just kind of drag this particular pattern. And let's say this is our pattern that's in our project. So now that I have those outs routed, what I'm going to do now at this point is just go to my edit menu and we go to render in place. And as we go to render in place, then I could see the settings that I want to use for this. We'll go to your render settings. We want to choose channel settings. And then at that point, we're going to have so we have our kick, snare, clap, hi-hat, all kind of broken down into. So once they're routed, whether you do it in a beat agent kit like we did, or if we had an acoustic agent kit, we would go to the mixer and do our output routing. Then at that point, it would automatically, when you do a render in place, and we choose the channel settings, that the output routing will automatically be preserved, and you can just come right over there. And when you export, all the files will be split into separate tracks. So let me know if that's helpful for you. Okay, so we have a Cubase user Thinking Man. It says, using Cubase 13 Pro on Mac, MIDI M2 Pro, when I try to launch with Rosetta to have VST2 functionality, it crashes. I'm forced to use native mode and limited to VST3. I changed nothing, just happened. So let me know. I mean, it could be some of the, if it's crashing on startup or if it's crashing not like when the program is started, but it could be even your VST2 plugins. Well, you can run VST2 plugins in on a Mac with the Apple Silicon processor. If it's a 32-bit plugin, that could cause problems, and some plugins may just crash by nature of being old and not compatible with later operating systems. So if you could let us know if it's not allowing you to get into Cubase, and that could be a plugin that's taking it down, you could try to, and what you could do is when you go to start Cubase, And I'll just show it in new window here. If you hold down on your Mac Command Option Shift right after starting the program, I may have missed it, you may get this little window where you could disable third-party plugins to see if you could get it started in Cubase. Then you know, if you hold down Command Option Shift right before you start and you deactivate third-party plugins, you know that it's one of the third-party plugins that's causing your Cubase to crash. So it could be that that particular plugin just isn't going to work on an Apple Silicon machine, and it could cause problems. Okay. All right, so we have a question. When I drag a chord sequence to the chord track, I've noticed that the chord detection is not infallible. And sometimes I have to manually move detected chords around. Is that normal? So sometimes, it's not going to be able to detect every single chord in every piece of music. There's a lot of different things that are going on in the analysis. I find it to do a really good job. Sometimes it may, perhaps get an inversion wrong or something, but occasionally you might have to tweak the results of a particular file, but it's much faster to do that than to kind of do it from scratch and not have kind of a basis to start with. All right, so we have Peter checking in from Montreal, where it's a balmy 35 degrees Celsius. It's pretty hot. All right. And Peter's welcoming me back from my vacation, so thank you. All right, so we see Parabot 2 on. Great to see you on again. All right, and we have Pertiko Menin checking in from Finland. All right, so we see from Chris, who asks, can you go through Beat Designer for MIDI inserts? Seems a little buggy compared to previous versions. Thanks. So I haven't really run into any problems, but let's go take a look. So we'll take this, we'll come over to our MIDI inserts. I'll just start with a Beat Designer. Okay, so I will just pick a couple sounds. All right, so let's make sure we have this track soloed. Let's see if sorry, I had this in a loop here. All right, so now let's say if you wanted to apply maybe like a swing, to the percussion, I want to take this particular pattern. Let's copy this pattern. Let's go to a different instrument here. Let's paste and do maybe a variation of it. So we'll come over here, let's just reverse. Let's go to a different pattern here. Paste our original one. And say we want to do like a 4 on the floor with a kick. And let's put some flams maybe on this variation. And we can set kind of our flam levels here. So I mean, it all seems to kind of be working as I would expect it to. But, you know, let me know if there's a particular thing that you're running into that Beat Designer isn't working so well with, and I'd be happy to try to reproduce it. I'm going to paste the Zoom meetup link, and again, this is a great way to meet different people or on the live streams. It's always great conversations. All right, so we see from the Ethrian machine or Ethrian machine. Greg, thank you for the stack template demo. That's what I needed. That's great. Thanks for letting me know. All right, wonderful to see Mark Rabin from Montana. Everyone give a big woof to Stella. All right, and we have Brian Sawyers, Sr., just sending greetings from Beulahville, North Carolina. Thanks. All right, and we have Lawrence Koch from Rhode Island. Thanks for joining us. So we see Daniel just saying, whoa, this is some advanced magic. So maybe that was the spectral layer stuff. All right, so Mark Rabin just asked, hey Greg, Groove Agent 5 render question to multi-out. Do you need to export mixer to Groove Agent in Cubase prior to render? Seems so to me. So you don't have to, you know, if you have an acoustic agent kit, you know, one of the things that you could do is if you had multiple outputs that were defined here, we'll notice that we have our mixer, we have, you know, our different auxiliary sends. So if we look at, and there's a whole suite of plugins. So you have like a Studio EQ, that's just like the Studio EQ plugin. So a lot of the plugins that we see, there's a whole collection of plugins that are here that are available to inside a Groove Agent. These are kind of the same algorithms and same plugins that we have available inside of Cubase. And if you wanted to take the mixer, one of the great things you could do is you could right click and you could export the mixer and effects to Cubase, and this would mimic the levels, descends, and EQs that you have, compression, tape saturation, envelope shaper for all the different tracks to the Cubase mixer. But as you saw just earlier, you know, we could export multiple tracks and export multiple files out of Groove Agent without having to export the mix console first. So it's something you can do, but it's not a required step to translating, to exporting multiple files out. All right, so Mark's second question says, after exporting of Groove Agent Mixer, can I reverse undo export mixer fix to Cubase? So if we do this, I think we could undo it right after the fact, but not after saving the song. So if I come here, let's export the mixer to Cubase. It's now exported, and then we could undo it right after the fact. But once it's been exported and you save the project and turn the computer off, at that point, it's going to be gone from the undo history. All right, so Mark's third question is how to unclip, unscissors key command. So I'll take another look. I didn't get a chance to look at this while I was on vacation. I kind of purposely didn't take my computer with me, but let's say we split this. Let me just look again in key commands for join. All right, so let's see if we do under edit glue. So we have option shift G. So that looks like it may have done it. So so if I have like this event selected, so we'll undo that. So say we have this split. Try maybe edit glue. Let me see if I have this selected. So try just the edit glue command, Mark. See if that is what you were looking for. All right, wonderful to see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. Oh, it's great to see Michael. All right, Arian Villegas asks, question, what is the correct way to add audio file to project? Thanks for everything. So I think the best way to do it is to go to your preferences first, and if you go to editing to audio, just so that the file is added into the project's audio file folder, that you want to just make sure that you have copy all files to project. And there's also a setting to convert to project settings. So if your project is at 48K and your audio file you're importing is at 44.1, it will automatically convert to the correct sample rate. So I like to make sure that those two settings are checked, and now all you'd have to do is just import audio file, and you could just double click, and then you could just add that audio file right directly into your project, just like so. Okay, so we see from Cubase user Thinking Man, it just says launch crash. So I would say that if it's not, if it's the VST2 plugin is not allowing you to start Cubase, that it's probably going to be one particular plugin that's causing the crash. So you could maybe take some of your VST2 plugins and take them out of your folders and add them one by one, and you can see which one is causing the particular crash. All right. All right, so we see from Music Man Ray 1, make it where we can hold Alt and click on record arm on a track to solo the record arm, please. All right, so let me just make sure that the solo function kind of works as expected. So I'll take this drum loop, I'm going to route it to a group. I'm going to create, and I'll just copy that a few times. I'm going to create an audio track. We're going to set that loop as the input bus. So let's say as we are recording this track, all right, so let me just but let me know if you need to. So I will pass that along. But let's say if I wanted to just hold down Alt or Option on this particular track, I'll delete that event. So like on my source track, so now I could come here. I'll pass it along as a feature request, but you know, usually people aren't soloing tracks as they're tracking, but I'll pass it along regardless. All right, so we see Michael Teens is back on the ice cream donation bandwagon again. All right. All right, so Lawrence from Barn Door Recording asks, Greg, can you explain the difference between bounce selection and render in place and uses for each, particularly related to spectrum editing? Thanks. So, you know, I don't know of a particular difference for spectral editing. I would say that when we do like a bounce selection, so let's say if I came here, I deleted this, and I doing a fade out and a fade in, and I had this level of this particular clip softer. So if I take this selection here and I don't want to have any processing, so I'm not worried about like applying or rendering the EQs, the inserts, the sends. At this point, I could go to audio and go to bounce selection and say replace event. So what was two separate events, and here we can see that we've carried over like the fade ins and fade outs have been automatically applied, and now I have one audio event that replaced the two separate events. Now, when I would do, we could do kind of the same thing with the render in place, but with the render in place, we have the option of doing the event or the entire track. We could do multiple tracks simultaneously. We also could apply the different effect processing. So I can make it dry. I could include channel settings, which would be the inserts, channel EQ, as well as the channel strip. We could also have the complete signal path, which would be the effect sends, and then we could also add the master effects. So think of the render in place as including processing and being able to do kind of multiple files. I think of more bounce selection, more kind of for cleaning up edits and consolidating edits easily. So I think that they would both be treated the same way for spectral editing. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Lawrence. All right, so I might chat field jumped. All right, you see Mark is happy that there's a Zoom today. Satish Music Center says thank you very much, sir. And we see that Stella is excited for Zoom. All right, so Michael Teams has granted me 1 gallon of fresh Texas strawberry ice cream for my return from vacation. Thank you very much. All right, Tim K's Buddy the cat waves a paw to Stella, Mark Rabin's dog. Good to see some cat representation in as well. My cat's usually asleep during live streams, I think. Very coddled life. All right, so we see from Michael Graybill, is there any way to save and load multiple instrument preset tracks at once? Looking for a way to make a big template more modular. Currently using deactivated tracks, though each is saved individually. So I think what you could do, obviously, I'm not sure if this was, we saw that we could do like the multi-track preset. But let me just look for, so let's say if I was doing kind of like a template, I know that this is what kind of Alan Silvestri does. He doesn't necessarily work with like a huge template, but he may just say, okay, here's my strings patches. All right, so he may just have everything set up and then save it as a track archive. So he would say export selected tracks. And we'll say strings. And I'm just going to put this on my desktop. Okay, so now when we go to look at our string tracks here, we'll open up, let's say, our instrument, and we will select our different tracks. We'll see different instruments. So we'll come over here to bass. So these will all be loaded up. So now we exported the selected tracks, and we can import track archive. So I'll do new project. And I will say, let's import the track archive. So if you don't want to use multi-track, like a multi-preset, like we did before, I will just come over here. Lots of screenshots on my. And at this point, I could select all, and all of my strings can be imported. So we could export the selected tracks and then import them as a track archive, stuff like that. So that's another approach in addition to the multi-track preset. All right, wonderful to see Braxel on. All right, and we have Nick checking in from Essex. All right, reading through comments here. All right, so we see we found a solution for Mark Rabin for all of his questions today, especially with the split tool or the unsplit tool. All right, great to see Razel Zamini from Denmark. Glad you could make it today. All right, so we see, hi Greg, any quick way to select a part of a track with the range selection tool and lower its volume by writing automation? All right, so let's say if we have our automation here. So one easy way of doing that is just if you select the automation here, you could, if you just grab this center point, if your automation lane is open, you could do that quite easily. So you could take just a selection and adjust the volume accordingly. So you can say, even if I wanted to now take the selection of all of those and lower multiple points, if you don't have the automation, let's say if we don't have the automation track open, let me just drop, let me just go to a particular project that has some audio in it. Okay, so let's say I have automation going here. All right, and we're going to start at minus 0.03. Okay, so if I don't have the automation and I have the range selected, I think we could go into the project logical editor and we could say we want to transform automation, and we'll say the position is inside range, and we want to trim, let's say we'll decrement by 6 dB or 2 dB. So now let's see if the automation needs to be opened or not. All right, I'm going to choose to do it on the selected track. Here, let me just, so say container type is track. We want to say property is set to is selected. And we'll choose position inside range. So we'll just try this. So we'll hit apply. Or I'll just do inside cycle. All right, I'll just. Okay, so there is a decreased volume of selected track. So let's try this as one of the factory presets. So if we just come over and let's say if we have our automation there, just go to decrease automation data of selected audio, MIDI, and instrument tracks. And then you could use that to do that. So a couple of different approaches. I think kind of an easy way is just kind of using the range tool on the automation and being able to quickly adjust there. All right, so we see from Michael Teens how to put effects on a specific measure or group of measures. Thanks, Greg. All right, so let's say I want to take this drum loop and I want to take this range. I'll show it in a different context. Okay, so let's say I want to take the guitars here and put a flanger on those particular recordings. So let's say we're listening to it. So I'm going to select the range of the events, come right over here to audio. Let's go to, and we can do it with direct offline processing, or we could just select plugins. And at this point, we'll say, okay, let's just do flanger. Okay. And now as we play. So the guitars are flanged. Just for a couple of bars that we had selected with the range tool. And the beauty of this is that we could select the events at any time and undo them. So we can say, okay, let's delete all the processes. Right click, delete. So again, if you want just kind of, or want to take just a section of the tracks or a couple measures, you could open it, hit F7, and that would also open up the offline processing. Select your plugin. So that's written into the file, but you can that way it gets to here. Flanging is going to stop. So that's, let me know if that makes sense for your workflow, Michael. And you could always undo that later. Okay. Sorry, my chat field jumped trying to find. All right, so we see Daniel saying, while I was away, he took his device searching kick snares, and he spent some time and found some serious, just right sounds in Media Bay. Greg for president of music. I don't think I'm ready for that, but. All right, so Fly V asks, what does solo defeat do when you hold Alt plus click on solo? Okay, so let's say I have solo defeat, so I'm going to hold down Alt or Option and click on my solo defeat. So now when I solo a track, so I'm going to solo my kick drum since my bass is in solo defeat. When I solo another track, we're going to hear. So this won't get muted when I solo a track. So this will not get muted when other tracks get muted when a track is soloed. So the solo on this particular track is defeated. So that's what it does. So now if I take this out of solo defeat, when I solo a track, but holding down Alt or Option, clicking on the solo button, this way, when you solo a track, you still hear the bass is not muted when other tracks are soloed. So that's what solo defeat mode is. All right. Thanks for your kind word, George. I'm on vacation, so yeah. Sorry to hear that Michael Teams lost 3 schoolmates this week in the last 5 days. It's tough to take, so sorry to hear that. You'll be in my thoughts. All right, I'm going to paste the Zoom meetup link again. All right, so we see that someone's email or question was deleted. Let me see if I have my phone handy. I'll take a look and see if we have an email here quickly. I think I see it, so let me just... All right, so question was kind of sent in. Why is it better to use 2 groups for parallel processing? I saw that you use 2 groups for this process. I always use 1 group with dry wet knob on a plugin. So what's the best way? So I think the dry, not every plugin has a dry wet knob. So if you don't have a dry wet knob on a plugin, so you know, and what the dry wet knob on the plugin will allow you to do is, let's come over here to the drums, and I'm going to send all my drums to a group. Just on my other computer, jump back here. All right, so we will come over here to all right, so when we come over here, let's say so if we're selling our drums here, so if the plugin, and again, a lot of plugins don't have a dry wet, so to kind of come up with a balance between the uncompressed signal and the compressed signal, if your plugin doesn't have that capability, then that's when you would use 2 groups. But if your plugin has a capability, it's not super necessary, because you could find that balance between the uncompressed and compressed signal. So if I back this off, we can find that balance. But again, a lot of plugins are mimicking particular pieces of hardware. When the hardware doesn't have the capability, then you would have to use like 2 different groups. But if you have a situation with the plugin with the dry wet balance, then you could do the parallel processing directly inside of the plugin and kind of get the same exact effect that you want. All right, wonderful to see Val checking in from Vienna. Glad you can make it today. All right, so we see I send in 2 questions by email, got a notification that you're on vacation. Shall I send them again, or you'll be able to answer in one of the upcoming live streams? So I think we should be able to get to it today. So I saw that there was questions sent in, so I have like 6 or 7 questions to go through today. All right, so we see Jason Sykes checking in from South Shields, England. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so we see from Music for LPs Records, can Spectral Layers 10 unmix a vocal feature, remove a noisy background of environment sounds from a vocal track? You know, I think what's probably better for that, let me see if I could open up. So it's not necessarily the unmixed vocals, but let's say if we have something that's kind of
titled the
Allie Kramer here in Springfield Township, which is just north of the Dayton area.
So what we could do is now come over here and let's do this in Spectral Layers. Just check my version. So this is in 11. So but there's a module here where you can say unmixed noisy speech, and I think that there's maybe in 10 that there's a noisy speech. But if we wanted to come over here, we could just choose. Sorry, you may hear my neighbors are having 2 beautiful trees cut down for some apparent reason next door. So you may hear chainsaws behind me. All right. All right, so now we've done this.
And then, in fact, we're northeast of Springfield City Center. The National Weather Service confirmed.
So that function would work well for you, Taylor? All right, so Razel asks, can you move automation points up and down with the arrow? So I don't think so. But yeah, because it's going to kind of move the tracks. But you know what you could do when it's not the arrow, it's just going to come right over here, and from the info line, use the user mouse scroll wheel. So once you have the automation point selected, this would allow you to kind of type in a specific value or use your mouse scroll wheel, but the arrows would kind of select the particular events, which makes sense to me. All right, so we see inactive user says, hi Greg, when I use a send channel and put effects on there like compressor and equalizer and blend it to the main source with 100%, does this behave like I add an extra insert slots to my track because I need more than 16 slots for inserts in my track? So I guess it would be the same way. You know, if you need, you know, what I would do if you needed more than 16 inserts is, you know, just come here and send it to a group channel, and then just, so select the track, right click, send that to a group channel. You can add a group channel, and then that group channel, you could just come right over here and add another 16 channels, send this group to another group, add 16 inserts, etc. So, but with sends, could kind of carry over, and it's not, sends are going out parallel, so as opposed to in series. So, be aware of that, and that may affect kind of your perception of sounds, because instead of going into the EQ then a compressor, we're kind of compressing the EQ signal, or the opposite way. When you're sending it out to an EQ and a compressor via sends, they're both kind of going out parallel, and the EQ is not feeding the compressor, or the compressor is not feeding the EQ. So. All right, so you see Michael Graybill says track archive's cool. Start saving the different combos. Thank you. This makes me very happy. So it's great. So James McDonald asks, do you ever use single effects track with 2 guitar amp inserts and just route them left and right? So I guess you could. Yeah, I mean, I tend not to do that unless I was like really hard up for CPU processing. So let's say if I wanted to, we'll jump back. Let's see if I have this project. In my recent files. Let me just open it up and we'll give it a try real quick. Try to remember the name of the project. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so here we're going to have our direct guitars. All right, so let's go add a guitar as a effects channel. So now we have the two guitars. So both of those are using just one amp via the effects ends. So you could definitely do that. So I have the individual tracks panned. Okay, so we have a question from Vincent. Do you know how common issues are working with a DAW controller via MCU? I implemented a DAW controller 8 months back, and I've been having issues in my head. Is it software or the controller that is the issue? But some people say the MCU protocol has a lot of issues. So, the MCU protocol was originally developed, I guess it was 2000, 2001. So it's about 24 years old, and it really hasn't been updated. It was kind of widely available, so a lot of different companies kind of implemented it. It's not fully documented. I don't think that you could actually get the documented. So a lot of MCU implementations are kind of backward engineered, so you might see slight variations. But one of the things that's annoying with the Mackie control protocol is that if I select a different track, the selection, if I select it in software, the selection isn't automatically reflected in the Mackie control protocol. So Mackie control assumes that you're going to do all track selection from the hardware and not select from the software and have the hardware catch up. So there are a bunch of little quirks like that haven't really been addressed, and Mackie as a company has probably been sold 2 or 3 times since different they under different ownership, different engineering teams that originally designed it versus what's available now. So I would say a lot of protocols are sometimes show their age. I think Mackie control is one that can show its age and not have the flexibility of what you have within the MIDI remote. But if you let us know exactly which particular issues you're running into with Mackie control, be happy to take a look at it for you. All right, so we see how to EQ drum, kick, or snare. So, every project's going to present different scenarios, but let's say if I wanted to, I'll just revert this project here since we have live drums. Whether you're doing live drums versus like a sampled, if you're doing like an R&B track with samples or a hip hop track versus live drums, EQing would be really different between those. Sorry, using an old plug-in there. All right, so let's say if I want to start here. I'm in the neighborhood. I got some cheap wine. All right, so here we have like 2 different kick drums. One to give a little more oomph. So some people like to EQ. So if I wanted to come right over here, let's get to the edit channel. So, in every song is going to present kind of different things. So, there isn't like always do this EQ. Make sure that the EQ is not conflicting with like the bass and the key of the song. So, a lot of times you want a little bit of body on the low end. Some people will like to have like high frequency in the kick. Like that may not cut through the mix as well. So if I take the kick here, yeah, we can see that this kick is going to have like a nice attack on it as it was recorded. So if we wanted to, but sometimes adding just a little bit of, so, you know, can make it kind of cut out in the mix. And often the snare, what you want to do is just make sure, so let's say, and here we have a lot of gates on it, but make sure that you have like, a lot of times, you know, just the right mic is kind of EQing it for you. But, you know, again, sometimes adding just a little bit, a touch of high end can make stuff kind of sound out, kind of pop out of the mix a little better. But, you know, every song, the key is like, you know, going to make a big difference in what EQ points that you're going to make for your drums as well. Okay, sorry, my chat field jumped on me. Let's see, kind words from Mark Rabin. Thank you very much. All right, Braxel asks, do you know how I can export a tempo map out of Superior Drummer into Cubase? So if it's doing it as a MIDI file, which is kind of a common way of doing it, what you can do is just simply import the MIDI file. And when you do that, so, you know, often tempos can be freely exchanged by MIDI file. But check your preferences. So go to your preferences here, and if it's not kind of importing as you expect, you want to go to your preferences to MIDI file, and there's a button here for ignore master track events. We can say, and this is basically tempo information. So make sure that this isn't checked, and I think it is by default. Because a lot of times if you drag a pattern from a plugin in, at that point it will it'll. All right, so we see Michael Teams says, I need to convert some audio tracks to MIDI. How can we do that, Greg? So Cubase is designed to kind of do it for our monophonic sources. So if we have like a bass part, I could come here, we could go to our Very Audio. So we'll come here into the sample editor, and now if we go to Very Audio at this point, we could choose under our functions to extract MIDI, and we could have it automatically extracted there. If it's for like drum replacement, what we could do is just come over here and go to hit points, and we could adjust kind of our hit point threshold, and at this point we could create MIDI notes right here. Now it's not going to do it for like a piano part or a guitar part to turn that into MIDI. It's very complex, and there's some things that do it, but not very well. All right, we have Tiago checking in from Brazil. Thanks for joining us. It's JVI, thank you for the kind words. Great to see you on the stream today. All right, we have Club to Breathe checking in from Rio, Brazil. All right, so we see from question, I know you can click on an arranger track and convert a cycle marker into an arrangement marker. Can you automate that with a macro? All right, let's give it a quick try, see if we can do this quickly. So I'm going to add a arranger track. All right, and we're going to add a marker track. All right, so say if we do this. So I don't know, let's see if we could. So here, if I hit the letter P, create, but I don't think that there's a way in a macro to create event between locators. Just take a look in the project logical editor. Yeah, it's not. And then, no, let's try. Yeah, I don't think that there's a way to kind of just double click or a way to kind of instantiate that with like a macro. But again, it's not too hateful to select, hit the letter P, then double click, and then you could kind of create. I'll play around with it some more and see if I could come up with it in kind of a macroable keyboard shortcut function, but I don't think that's so hateful, but I understand it's an extra double click. All right, Brian, so your senior says, is there a way to compare two MIDI tracks and do corrections to one like an overlay? All right, so let's say I want to look at my oboe part and my cello part. So I'm going to hit Command E or Control E. So we look at it, we could see both parts here. And then if we wanted to look at, we could make our different parts active right here if we're in the full screen editor. But if we just kind of look at, I'll zoom in here. This way we could see the cello part here, and then we could see the oboe part at the top, and then we could choose to make one active for editing and use one as a preference. So just select what instruments you want to see. So let's say, okay, horn and string bass. And then Command E, we can see the bass and the horn in the editor simultaneously. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Brian. All right, so Braxel asks, does Cubase have a VU meter plugins? Yes, it's part of the Supervision, which is an entire analysis and metering plugin suite. So if you come right over here, you'll see under the Analyzer section, Supervision, and then you could just choose VU meter. And when you open it up, go to Settings, and you probably get more expected readings by selecting VU dB full scale. And here you could have multiple metering types, including VU. So, all right. So we see Matt Elston on. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so we see just clarification from Lawrence. His question on the bounce selection or render in place. So he says, thanks, Greg. So if I do some editing in spectral layers and want to make it permanent in a track, which would be best to use? Would bounce make a new event with the spectral edits? So if you wanted to make it permanent, all you'd have to do is if we've done spectral edits to it. So let's say we have this file here and, you know, or this particular track, and we've done our spectral edits. That in when you go to the extension here, you'll just see make track extension permanent. And so you don't have to do bounce or render in place. You could just click right here and make the track extension permanent. So give that a try, Lawrence. But all right, so we have Majid Bass Groove. Hi, Greg. How can I create music scores, music sheet for my recorded bass line in Cubase Elements, given that I may have multiple tracks in one file? So Cubase Elements doesn't have Very Audio, which is what would be used. Let me just jump over here. So it's not a function in Cubase Elements to automatically take a recorded bass part, but Cubase Artist and Cubase Pro has this function where we can say, let's come over here, we'll go to our Very Audio, and I could probably clean stuff up, but at this point I'm going to say we're going to extract MIDI. And now our MIDI part, we could look at it right there. And if I wanted to kind of clean it up a bit, but now you could see kind of the part printed out, but it's not a function of Cubase Elements with the Vari audio to do the audio to MIDI conversion. Sorry about that. All right, so we have Double Bass asks, hi all, I have a problem with activation. Who can I contact? Can you help? I mean, you could always reach out to your, to Steinberg's, you could create a support request form, but make sure when you're doing the activation that, when you're in the Steinberg activation manager, that your account, that you're logged in with your, you're going to create My Steinberg credentials, and make sure that your Steinberg activation manager is also logged in. That's usually the problem, but any of the Steinberg support teams can help with that. But make sure that your Steinberg download assistant that you're logged into that, and your Steinberg activation manager that you're logged in with your My Steinberg credentials. All right, so we have a question: is Nuendo designed more for audio for video work versus Cubase? That's a kind of a, if you had to say like a 4-word description, so you could say yes, it's going to be doing more for dialogue replacement. There's more Dolby Atmos mixing functionality. There's more, like we saw there's going to be tools for cleaning up the audio, like when we saw the lady talking into the storm, stuff like that is going to be included. Plus, audio like reconforming. So if you need to, have your whole project align with a new edit decision list, we could do that stuff in Cubase or in Nuendo that's not found in Cubase. All right, I'm going to go to some questions that were mailed in advance here. So let me open up my sheet so we get through these questions. If you've learned something new, make sure you hit the like button. All right, so we have, let's see, first question. I seem to struggle with editing velocity in a key editor. Let's say there's a piano chord. When I highlight a note with the chord, I still have problems adjusting the velocity of that particular note in the velocity lane. Sometimes Cubase adjusts a different note from the chord, not the one I highlighted. It seems a bit awkward. Maybe you have a suggestion how to cope with that. Okay, so let's say we see our notes in our editor here, and we want to adjust, let's say, the velocity of one particular note that's in a chord. So if we hold down Control or Command plus the Shift key, we could adjust the velocity of a single note within the chord. Or if we just select a particular note here, so a lot of times, and you see this with drum events too, that you select a note and then you make an adjustment, and you're not sure which one of the notes that you're adjusting the velocity. But you could also click here, adjust the velocity directly right on from the info line. But again, try the Control or Command plus Shift and just click on the note, and then you could adjust the velocity of that note within the chord independently. All right, so we see second question. With the expression maps in the key editor, there are instruments that need to have the trigger of an articulation slightly before the actual note of the instrument. With the expression maps, I seem to be bound to the timing of the note of the instrument. An example with native instruments, prime, bass, the articulation must be triggered slightly before the bass note. Is there a way around this? So what a lot of people do in this situation is, let's say we have, your expression maps, and the expressions don't change as quickly as you want, try going to, and we'll have a track delay function right here. So what a lot of people do is just simply, as they do that, in the articulations and notes will fall a little bit late as a result, is you could adjust. It's usually like 10, 20, sometimes 30 milliseconds. Try adjusting the playback start. You'll see kind of a track delay here. So try adjusting that, and that a lot of people use that to kind of trigger the articulations earlier without affecting where the notes are placed. All right, so a question, how can I create a key shortcut to mute, disable, and hide currently selected track? Also, is it possible to receive reply to this email with the YouTube section with the answer? All right, so let's take a look. So let's say we have a number of tracks and I wanted to mute, these tracks, disable them so they're not taking any particular processing power, and hide them. So we could do this in the project logical editor. So let's go ahead and okay, so what I did is we said container type, we chose transform. Container type is equal to track. And property is set to is selected, and in our track operation we're going to choose to mute this track, so we're going to enable mute, and in the post process commands we're going to choose audio disable / enable track, and then also channel and track visibility, hide selected channels. So when I run this, and we could assign a keyboard shortcut to process this particular logical editor function. So we'll just come over here and we'll see process project logical editors, and we could assign a key command for this, which we called it mute, hide, and disable selected track. So you could assign a key command to trigger this. So right now we'll apply. So those two tracks are now hidden, and when we unhide them, we can see that they are disabled. So you may not have to mute and disable because the disabled track isn't going to play. I will choose to enable these particular tracks, and now at this point you can see that they're enabled, that they excuse me, that they are muted, and then you could just unmute again. So at this point, just create this project logical editor, and you could just do that very easily using those particular keys, just like that. All right, so we have a question. I have a problem with my mixdowns not showing up on my hard drives. After exporting, I primarily use real-time export, but tried both. I also tested 3 different hard drives. 1, I set my locators. 2, export audio mixdown. 3, name the file, choose location, external hard drive, which is Samsung T7. Tick the real-time box, 48K 24-bit interleaved. Single main out, locators, export range, add to queue, start queue export, and Cubase does its magic. Nothing shows up on my computer or my thoughts. It says, my thoughts, I occasionally have luck and find a file showing after I restart the hard drive or Cubase, but the whole thing is random. It feels like this is a bug with Cubase. Cubase is having problems with making the files in real time. Could this be the case? Scripting the file is bugging. My current project is very big. I have to freeze all the tracks to be able to export without Cubase stopping. If I set up an instrument with different Okay, so I haven't run into any scenario like that, the export. Usually when I see, so I'm not sure if you need to do a Q export or if you're doing multiple ones. So say if we come over here to our export audio mixdown, and as we do this, so if you're just doing a stereo mixdown, you may not, see if it makes any difference if you're not doing it in a queue. But I've never had it not create a file or show up. Sometimes with a routing error, it may show up as a blank file, but there's always, and one thing that you could always test is after export, and this is always an interesting test that I do. Just after export, choose to create an audio track, and then you could see right then and there, this would take a copy of that audio file, and if you have your preferences set to automatically add the project, as files are imported into the project, it's added into the project folder. That would be a good test to do to see if you choose create audio track, if the file is created, and then you could make sure that it's not being sent to a different location also. But I've never had Cubase not actually create a mixdown file for me. Okay, question. If I set up an instrument with different articulations that are triggered by different MIDI channels, is it possible to change the MIDI channels from a controller keyboard while recording? Example, play legato notes, switch MIDI channel, then play short notes. Example, spiccato without interrupting the recording flow. Is it possible? Yeah, so you could definitely do that. So if we have, if you have different articulations on different channels, what you could do is, and if you're doing different MIDI channels, the one thing that you may have to set is, for your MIDI channel is to set it to MIDI channel any. Otherwise, it could filter out particular. It may, so if it says filtering out messages on different channels, you could just set it to MIDI channel any, and then all 16 MIDI channels can be, played and inputted directly from, and you can see on the MIDI channel inputs, you could set that to any, and then that will accept MIDI channels 2, MIDI channels 1 for different articulations. So it's not kind of the most normal approach to doing that, but having them on different MIDI channels shouldn't be a problem within Cubase. All right, so we had a question. Is it possible to map MIDI expressions on Cubase in a way so if I'm playing something in Superior Drummer or any other VST instrument that Cubase could translate it over to a piece of software like Addictive Drums or VSL Power Drums or any other VST instrument? All right, so let's say we have, in this example, just a quick drum pattern here. So what we could do if we wanted to map drums, if the drums aren't aligned, like like your tom sound is triggering a cymbal or it's just kind of playing the wrong sounds, what we could do is we could just create a MIDI track. And on this MIDI track, when we go to the drum map, we want to go to drum map setup. And we're going to create a new drum map here. I'm going to put all the drum sounds on channel 1. Okay, so now I'm going to copy this particular MIDI. So let's say in this example, I'm going to have, I have a Groove Agent kit, and I'll just make this a little louder. And we have like a more of a B-box kit. All right, so what we could do now that we've created a drum map, we made a new drum map, and then I'm going to add a MIDI track because this MIDI track, as opposed to an instrument track, this MIDI track isn't going to automatically be routed to a particular instrument. And here we're going to choose, I just chose empty map, I didn't name it, but this is our drum map that we just created. So now when I double click, and I'm going to do it on this particular one, so we'll say empty map. So we double click, and at this point we could just say, okay, I want to take my different sounds. So let's say as we listen to it here, we're going to play. And I'll just put this. And as we extend this over, instead of this going out to the track, I could say, let me just take off that, sorry. But now I could say I want this to go out to the B box. And at this point we could just kind of route to our different drums. So let me just unmute the B box. So now we can say the kick, and we have what we call in notes and out notes. So if I wanted to now come here, and once you have kind of like this mapping set up and saved, you could actually just kind of create, you know, a drum map that goes from this library to this library. A drum map that goes from here, because now every sound that we're in the MIDI track can go to a separate pitch, so we can remap the pitch. We can have independent MIDI channels and independent MIDI ports, because we have a MIDI track, and now that we're using our drum map, we could take these and send it to 128 different destinations, all within one single edit screen. So once you kind of tweak it, you could save that as a drum map, and then at that point have different drum maps that translate from one library to another pretty easily. All right, I'm going to post the Zoom meetup. Will be starting in just a couple minutes. I'll post the link again. See if we get our couple questions in. So we see from George, who asks, is there a way in the key editor or drum editor to use a key command to jump to the next event of the same pitch, like kick drum to next kick drum without snares or hi-hats in between? All right, so let's say if I'm here and I have these selected. All right, so we have hang on, just one, sorry. Yeah, so I think it's not going to, it's going to be the left and right arrow keys will do the next MIDI event, but not of the same pitch via keyboard shortcut. So let me just see if we can do via selected. Yeah, so I don't think that there's a keyboard shortcut way of doing that. It's going to go through sequentially. Yeah, so it's just going to go through kind of sequentially, but not based upon the same pitch. But I'll dive into a little bit more, see if there's a logical editor preset that perhaps I can make. All right, just saw my chat field jump. Let me just see if I can find my questions. All right. All right, so we have a question. Can I remove the names from the waveforms? It's kind of distracting. All right, so let's take a look. Let me just drop. Okay, so I think that if we go into preferences, let's go to event display audio, and there's a append clip name to event name. Let me just. I think there's a preference for it. Show event names. Yeah, so you could just, so go to preferences to event display and uncheck show event names. And then you can hide that. All right, so we see Cassandra Husky says, how often are these videos? So we do it twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. All right, and so we see, where are these videos stored, and do you put notes on what is discussed? So if you go to the Cubase YouTube channel, look in the live section, and every question that'll be asked will be in the top comment. So in the comments field, you'll see timestamps for every question. All right, so we see Guido from Argentina. All right, so and you see it's 3 o'clock, so let's go ahead and start. I'm going to paste the Zoom meetup, and this is a great way to kind of meet different people in the community. I'm going to start this Zoom meeting. All right, we see Douglas Carmichael already. We see Jan. John Costigan. So looks like the link is working. We see Jay. We see Uno Memento, Tim Weinheimer. We see Nick. Michael Marshall. And we see Brian Sawyer. Soren. All right. Great to see Soren on. All right, I'm going to paste one more time in the Zoom or in the live stream. Get people transitioned over. All right, so Vince joining us. Give it another minute or so before we. All right, so we have David M joining us. And give it another 30 seconds and we'll transition fully over to Zoom. All right, we'll wait till 5 minutes after the hour, then we'll end the Zoom or end the live stream. And all right, so done that. So I'm going to end the live stream.